She had not eaten a bite in nearly a week. When Nathan Cole found her beneath that juniper tree, vultures were already circling. Her lips were cracked and bleeding. Her ribs showed through her torn dress. She was hours from death. But this dying woman was hiding something, a leather satchel she refused to release, even while unconscious. A secret that had already gotten her parents murdered. And a truth that would expose the most powerful man in the territory as a cold-blooded killer. Nathan had spent 3 years hiding from his own demons. Now, he had a choice. Walk away and let her die. Or save her life and risk everything he had left. What happens next will keep you on the edge of your seat until the very last word. This story reminds us that healing never happens alone. Sometimes the person who saves your life is the same person whose life you were meant to save. And sometimes the courage to face your past comes from finding someone worth fighting for. At its heart, this is a story about second chances. About two broken people who found each other in the wilderness and discovered that love can grow even in the harshest conditions. It proves that justice is worth fighting for, that truth will always find a way to surface, and that the simple act of kindness, cooking a meal for a stranger, can change 2 lives forever. If you believe that good stories deserve to be heard, drop a comment and tell me what you think will happen to Kate and Nathan. Hit that like button if you are ready for this journey, and if you want more stories about courage, love, and justice in the Old West, subscribe to this channel and ring that notification bell so you never miss an upload. Now settle in, friends. This tale is about to begin. The wind carried the smell of death across the Colorado high country, and Nathan Cole knew that scent too well. He'd been tracking a stray steer through the rocky outcrops north of his cabin when he first spotted them. Vultures. Not 2 or 3 like you might see circling a rabbit carcass or a snake killed crossing the trail. No, this was different. Over a dozen of the ugly birds wheeled in lazy circles against the afternoon sky, their dark wings casting shadows on the sun-bleached earth below. They were getting lower with each pass. Something was dying out there, or already dead. Nathan reined in his sorrel mare and squinted against the glare. After 3 years of living alone in these mountains, he had learned to read the land the way some men read books, and right now the land was telling him a story he did not want to hear. He urged the horse forward anyway. The mare picked her way down a rocky slope toward a narrow canyon, where a twisted juniper tree grew from a crack in the stone. Nathan's hand moved instinctively to the colt at his hip, though he sensed no immediate danger beyond what nature herself had already inflicted on whatever lay beneath that tree. Then he saw her, a woman, slumped against the trunk so still that for a long moment Nathan thought he was too late. She wore what had once been a traveling dress, the kind a city woman might wear, but it was torn now and faded by weather and hardship. Her dark hair was matted and tangled. Her face was turned away from the sun, as if even its warmth had become an enemy. Nathan dismounted quickly, ground tying the mare with a flick of the reins, and approached on foot. His boots crunched on the dry earth. The vultures above let out harsh cries of protest at the interruption of their meal. Up close, the situation was worse than he had feared. Her lips were cracked and bleeding, split open from days without water. Her exposed skin was burned raw, blistered in places where the relentless sun had done its damage. And beneath the torn fabric of her bodice, Nathan could see the sharp outline of her ribs. This woman had not eaten in a very long time, but she was breathing, barely. A shallow rise and fall of her chest that could stop at any moment. Nathan knelt beside her and uncorked his canteen. He had seen men die of thirst before, back when he wore a badge. He knew that giving water too fast to someone this far gone could kill them just as surely as withholding it entirely. He lifted her head gently, cradling it in the crook of his arm, and brought the canteen to her lips. "Just small sips," he murmured. "Easy now. Not too fast." Her eyes fluttered open. They were the pale green of sage after rain, those eyes, though dulled now by suffering. For one heartbeat, Nathan saw nothing in them but confusion. Then recognition flooded in. Not recognition of him, recognition of danger. She recoiled violently, scrambling backward against the tree trunk, her cracked lips pulling back in a grimace of terror. Her hands scrabbled at the ground, searching for something. A weapon, a rock, anything. Easy, Nathan said, holding up both hands to show he meant no harm. Easy. I am not going to hurt you. She stared at him with the wild eyes of a cornered animal. Her breath came in harsh gasps that clearly pained her raw throat. But she did not try to run. Maybe because she knew she could not. Nathan noticed something then. Even in her panic, even barely conscious and more dead than alive, she had not released her grip on a leather satchel clutched against her chest. Her fingers were white-knuckled around its strap. Whatever was in that bag, she was willing to die rather than let it go. "My name is Nathan Cole," he said quietly. "I have a cabin about 2 hours' ride south of here. I'm going to take you there. Get you some food. Some proper rest. You understand me?" She did not answer. But after a long moment, some of the fear drained from her eyes. She let him bring the canteen to her lips again. This time she drank. Small sips, like he had told her. The water ran down her chin, mixing with the dried blood from her cracked lips. She coughed once, then opened her mouth for more. "When did you last eat?" Nathan asked. Her voice came out as barely a whisper, hoarse and broken. "Days. Maybe a week. I stopped counting." Something tightened in Nathan's chest at those words. A week without food in this unforgiving landscape, and she was still alive. That took a particular kind of stubborn strength, the kind that interested him despite himself. "What happened to you?" She closed her eyes. "Wagon train. We were heading west. There was an accident. My parents. They fell with the wagon. I got lost trying to find the trail again." Nathan studied her face as she spoke, the hesitation before certain words. The way her eyes flickered to the left when she mentioned the accident. He had spent 5 years as a deputy sheriff before he resigned. He had interrogated enough criminals to know when someone was lying. This woman was not telling him the whole truth. But he also knew better than to push. Not now, not when she was this close to death. "Can you stand if I help you?" She nodded weakly. Nathan lifted her to her feet as gently as he could manage. Her legs buckled immediately, and he had to catch her full weight against his chest. She weighed almost nothing. He could feel every rib through the thin fabric of her dress. She had not eaten a bite in nearly a week. This cowboy needed to cook for her, and he needed to watch her heal. He carried her to his horse. The mare, a steady creature named Rosie, who had seen plenty of strange things in her years, stood patiently as Nathan maneuvered the woman into the saddle. Then he swung up behind her, one arm wrapped around her waist to keep her from sliding off. "Hold on to that bag of yours," Nathan said. "We have got a ways to go." She clutched the satchel tighter against her chest, but did not explain what was in it. Nathan did not ask. They rode in silence for nearly an hour before she spoke again. "My name is Catherine Bishop." She paused. "My friends call me Kate." "Well, Kate, you just rest now. We will be at my cabin before dark." She leaned back against his chest, and within minutes the exhaustion took her. Nathan felt her body go slack, her head lolling against his shoulder. He kept his arm secure around her waist and urged Rosie into an easy lope. The afternoon sun beat down as they rode, and Nathan found himself thinking about the strange turns life could take. This morning he had been alone, as he had been for 3 years. Tonight, he would be responsible for another human life. The thought should have troubled him. The last time he had been responsible for someone else's life, a 12-year-old boy named Samuel, had ended up dead. Nathan's bullet. Nathan's mistake. Nathan's burden to carry for the rest of his days. But looking down at this half-starved woman, this stranger who had somehow survived what should have killed her, Nathan felt something he had not felt in a very long time. Purpose. As the sun began its descent toward the western peaks, painting the sky in shades of orange and deep purple, a sound made Nathan's blood run cold. Kate was talking in her sleep, mumbling words that made no sense at first. Then, clear as a church bell, "Papa! Papa, run!" Her body tensed, her hands clenched into fists. "They found us. Papa, they found us." Nathan pulled Rosie to a stop and looked down at the woman in his arms. Her face was twisted in the grip of a nightmare, tears leaking from her closed eyes. This was no accident victim. This woman had not gotten lost trying to find a trail. She was running from something, or someone. And from the terror in her voice, whoever she was running from was the kind of someone who killed. Nathan touched his heels to Rosie's flanks and picked up the pace. Whatever Kate was hiding, whatever truth lay beneath her half-formed lies, she needed help. And right now, Nathan Cole was the only help she had. As they crested the final ridge before his cabin, Kate stirred in his arms. Her eyes opened, still hazy with fever and exhaustion, but more alert than before. "Please." Her voice was barely a breath. "Do not tell anyone I am here. They will find me." Nathan felt his jaw tighten. "Who will find you?" But she had already slipped back into unconsciousness, leaving him with nothing but questions and a cold knot of worry in his gut. He rode on toward the cabin, the setting sun at his back and the shadows growing long before him. Somewhere out there, beyond the mountains and the valleys and the wild, empty spaces of the Colorado Territory, someone was looking for this woman. And Nathan had a feeling that when they found her, they would not stop to ask questions before they pulled the trigger. For the first time in 3 years, Nathan Cole felt something other than guilt. He felt curiosity. He felt that old protective instinct stirring in his chest, the one he thought had died the day he killed Samuel. He felt alive. And as he carried Kate through the door of his cabin and laid her gently on his bed, he made a decision that would change both their lives forever. He was going to help her, whatever it took, whatever it cost. Because some things were worth fighting for. And this woman, this stranger with her green eyes and her secrets and her stubborn will to survive, was one of them. Nathan built up the fire and put water on to boil. He had dried beans soaking since morning and a bit of salt pork left from his last trip to town. It was not much, but it would make a thin broth. Something gentle enough for a stomach that had gone without for far too long. She had not eaten a bite in nearly a week. This cowboy was going to cook for her, and he was going to watch her heal. Kate woke to the smell of cooking. For a long moment she did not know where she was. The ceiling above her was rough-hewn timber, not canvas. The bed beneath her was soft, not hard ground, and the air smelled of wood smoke and salt pork instead of dust and fear. Then memory came flooding back. The vultures, the man with kind brown eyes, the horse ride through the fading afternoon. She was in his cabin. Nathan Cole. That was what he had said his name was. Kate's hand flew to her chest. The satchel. Where was the satchel? Panic clawed at her throat until her fingers found the familiar leather strap still crossing her body. She had not let go of it even in her sleep. Good. If she lost that bag, if she lost what was inside it, then everything her father had died for would mean nothing. She pushed herself up on shaking arms and looked around the small room. The cabin was simple but clean. A stone fireplace dominated one wall, flames crackling cheerfully within. A rough table with 2 chairs sat near the center. Shelves lined with books filled one corner, which surprised her. Cowboys did not usually keep libraries. And there, hanging on the wall near the door, was something that made Kate's heart skip a beat. A badge. A deputy sheriff's star, bent and tarnished, as if someone had thrown it against the wall in anger or grief. The man himself stood with his back to her, stirring something in a pot over the fire. He was tall, over 6 feet, with broad shoulders and the lean, muscular build of someone who worked hard for his living. His dark brown hair curled slightly at his collar, and several days of stubble covered his strong jaw. He turned when he heard her stirring, and Kate saw his eyes clearly for the first time. Warm brown, full of a quiet kindness that contrasted with the hardness of his features. But beneath that kindness was something else, something broken. She recognized it because she carried the same thing in her own heart. "You are awake," Nathan said. He ladled something into a tin cup and brought it to her. "Broth. Eat slow. Your stomach has shrunk down to nothing after going so long without food. Eat too fast and you will bring it all back up." Kate took the cup with trembling hands. The warmth of it spread through her fingers, chasing away a chill she had not even realized she felt. She brought it to her lips and inhaled. Salt pork, beans, something herbal she could not identify. It smelled like hope. The first sip was transcendent. Kate wanted to gulp down the entire cup, to fill the aching void in her belly, but she forced herself to follow his advice. One small sip at a time. Let her body remember how to process food again. Nathan pulled one of the chairs close to the bed and sat down, watching her eat with careful attention. He did not say anything. He did not need to. The silence between them was comfortable somehow, like the silence between old friends rather than strangers. When she had finished the small portion, he took the cup and refilled it halfway. "A bit more. But then you need to stop for tonight. Trust me on this." Kate nodded. "Thank you. I do not know how to repay you for this kindness." "No repayment needed." Nathan's voice was quiet but firm. "Out here, we help each other. That is just how it is." But even as he said it, Kate saw his eyes flick to the satchel still clutched against her chest. He had questions. Of course he did. A half-dead woman does not appear in the wilderness carrying a bag she refuses to release without there being a story behind it. She needed to give him something. Some version of the truth that would satisfy his curiosity without putting him in danger. Kate took another sip of broth and began to speak. "My family was part of a wagon train." She kept her voice steady, rehearsing the lies she had prepared during those long days of walking. "We were heading from Missouri to Oregon. My father had dreams of farmland, open space, a new beginning." Nathan nodded, encouraging her to continue. "We were crossing a mountain pass when the accident happened. A wheel broke. The wagon went over the edge. My parents were killed. I was thrown clear, landed on a ledge about 20 feet down. By the time I climbed back up, the rest of the train had moved on. They must have thought I was dead too." "And you have been walking ever since?" Kate nodded. "I tried to follow the trail, but I got turned around. Everything looks the same out here. I walked for days, maybe a week. I do not remember much of it, just putting one foot in front of the other. It was a good story, believable. The kind of tragedy that happened often enough on the frontier that no one would question it too closely. But Nathan Cole had spent 5 years as a deputy sheriff, and Kate could tell from the slight narrowing of his eyes that he did not believe a word of it. "What were your parents' names?" Kate felt her heart stutter. "Robert and Margaret. Robert and Margaret Bishop." She had hesitated. Just for a fraction of a second, just long enough for a man who used to interrogate criminals to notice. But Nathan did not call her out on it. He simply nodded and said, "I am sorry for your loss. That is a hard thing to bear alone." Kate felt tears prick at her eyes. The sympathy in his voice was genuine, even if he knew she was lying about the details. This man, this stranger, was offering her kindness without demanding the truth in return. It was more than she deserved. "Get some rest," Nathan said, standing. "I will sleep out on the porch tonight. In the morning I will take you into town. There is a doctor there, and a boarding house run by a good woman. They will help you get back on your feet." Kate felt panic flare in her chest. Which town? Silverton. Half a day's ride south. Silverton. The word hit her like a physical blow. That was the town mentioned in her father's ledger, the town where the conspiracy led, the town where the man responsible for her parents' murder might very well be waiting. "I'm not strong enough yet," Kate said quickly. "Could I stay here a few more days?" "I will not be any trouble. I can help with chores once I'm feeling better." Nathan studied her for a long moment. Kate could almost see the wheels turning in his mind, putting together the pieces of a puzzle that was missing most of its parts. "All right," he said finally, "a few more days. But Kate, whatever you are running from, whoever you are hiding from, I cannot help you if I do not know the truth." She met his eyes. "When I am ready to tell you, you will be the first to know." It was not a promise, but it was not nothing either. Nathan nodded once and headed for the door. "Get some sleep. Tomorrow you need to start eating proper meals again. Small portions, spread throughout the day. Your stomach will need time to adjust." He paused at the threshold and looked back at her. "That satchel you're holding on to like your life depends on it. Whatever is in there, it is safe here. I give you my word." Then he was gone, leaving Kate alone with the crackling fire and her troubled thoughts. She waited until she heard him settle on the porch outside. Then, moving slowly so as not to make noise, she opened the satchel and pulled out its contents. A thick ledger filled with her father's handwriting. Dates, names, amounts. A record of crimes stretching back 3 years, all pointing towards someone in power. Someone who was using a gang of outlaws to rob wagon trains and steal land. A family photograph. Kate with her mother and father, all of them smiling, taken 2 years ago when life still made sense. On the back, in her father's careful script, Morrow Family, Pinkerton Agency, 1876, and a map. Crudely drawn but detailed enough to be useful. An X marked a location somewhere near Silverton. Kate stared at these objects, the only things she had left of her parents, and felt the familiar fire of determination burning in her chest. Her father had died trying to bring down a corrupt man. Her mother had died simply for being in the wrong place at the wrong time. And Kate had survived against all odds, carrying the evidence that could bring their killer to justice. She was not going to let their deaths be in vain. "I will finish what you started, Papa," she whispered to the photograph, "even if it kills me." From outside, she heard a sound that made her blood run cold. Nathan was having a nightmare. Through the thin cabin walls, Kate could hear him thrashing on the porch, muttering words she could not quite make out. Then, clear and anguished, "Samuel. God, no." Samuel. The name meant nothing to Kate. But the grief in Nathan's voice, the raw pain, told her everything she needed to know. This man was running from something, too. Some ghost from his past that haunted his dreams, just as her parents' murders haunted hers. 2 people, 2 nightmares, 1 roof. Kate lay back on the bed and closed her eyes. But sleep was a long time coming. When it finally took her, she dreamed of flames and screaming, and men with guns riding out of the darkness. And when she woke to the gray light of dawn, she found Nathan already up, already cooking, already watching her with those careful brown eyes that saw too much. She had not eaten a bite in nearly a week. This cowboy had cooked for her, and now he was going to watch her heal, whether she wanted him to or not. 3 days passed, and Kate grew stronger with each meal Nathan prepared. True to his word, he fed her small portions spread throughout the day. Broth at first, then thicker stews with bits of salt pork and vegetables. By the 3rd morning, she was able to eat a full bowl of oatmeal without her stomach rebelling. The color was returning to her cheeks. The cuts and burns on her skin were healing under the careful application of salve Nathan produced from somewhere in his supplies. She could walk on her own now, though her legs still trembled after any extended effort. And she was learning things about Nathan Cole that did not fit the picture of a simple cowboy living alone in the mountains. The books, for instance. She had expected dime novels, the kind of sensational tales about outlaws and Indians that city folk loved. Instead, she found Shakespeare and Milton, volumes of history and philosophy, well-worn copies of Dickens and Hawthorne. These were the books of an educated man. Then there was the badge. She had asked about it on the second day, and Nathan's face had gone hard and distant. "I used to be a deputy sheriff," he had said, "in Silverton. I resigned 3 years ago. Why?" He had not answered, just turned back to the fire and stirred the pot he was tending with more attention than the task required. Kate had not pushed. She understood the need for privacy. God knew she had secrets of her own. But she filed the information away, adding it to the puzzle that was Nathan Cole. On the morning of the third day, Nathan announced he needed to check on his cattle in the north pasture. Kate was strong enough now to be left alone for a few hours, and he had work that would not wait any longer. "Take this." He handed her a revolver, a Colt Navy that had clearly seen years of use. "You know how to shoot?" Kate almost laughed. If Nathan only knew. "My father taught me," she said, which was the truth for once. He believed a woman should know how to protect herself. Nathan nodded approvingly. "Good. I should be back before dark. Do not go far from the cabin, and if anyone comes by asking questions, you have never seen me and I have never seen you." He saddled Rosie and rode out, and Kate was left alone for the first time since he had found her beneath the juniper tree. She spent the morning exploring the cabin with fresh eyes. The bent badge still hung on the wall, but now she noticed other things. A wanted poster tucked into one of the books, featuring a man named Silas Kincaid. The same name that appeared over and over in her father's ledger. The man who led the gang that had killed her parents. Why would Nathan have the wanted poster for Kincaid? Was it from his days as a deputy, or something more recent? Kate found herself pacing the small cabin, her mind racing with questions she had no way to answer. She needed to get to Silverton. She needed to see the courthouse, verify the information in her father's ledger, find the evidence that would bring down the man responsible for the conspiracy. But she also needed to be careful. If she walked into town and the wrong person recognized her, she would be dead before she could speak a word of accusation. The afternoon sun was slanting through the western window when Kate heard something outside. At first she thought it was Rosie returning. But the sound was wrong. Not hoofbeats, padding footsteps, something moving through the brush. Kate grabbed the Colt and moved to the window. Her blood turned to ice. A wolf stood 20 yards from the cabin door. A big one, lean and hungry-looking with gray fur and yellow eyes that fixed on the window where Kate stood. Wolves did not usually come this close to human habitation. This one must be desperate, starving, willing to risk the smell of man for the possibility of food. The wolf took a step closer, then another. Kate's hand was steady as she raised the Colt and cocked the hammer. She had been taught to shoot by one of the best marksmen in the Pinkerton agency. Her father had made sure his daughter could handle a weapon before he let her accompany him on any investigation. Kate could hit a playing card at 50 paces on a good day. But she did not want to kill this wolf. It was just trying to survive, same as her. She adjusted her aim and fired. The bullet kicked up dirt exactly 2 feet in front of the wolf's nose. The animal yelped in surprise and bolted, disappearing into the brush with its tail between its legs. Kate let out a breath she had not realized she was holding. That was a hell of a shot. She spun around, the Colt coming up instinctively. Nathan stood in the doorway, one hand raised in a calming gesture. "Easy, just me." Kate lowered the weapon, her heart pounding. "You startled me. I noticed." Nathan came inside and closed the door behind him. His eyes moved from her face to the gun in her hand to the window and back again. "I heard the shot from the ridge. Thought something was wrong, just a wolf. Hungry one from the look of him." Nathan nodded slowly. "That shot, though, right at his feet. Close enough to scare him, but not close enough to hit him. That takes skill. My father was a good teacher. What kind of father teaches his daughter to shoot like a sharpshooter?" Kate met his eyes. The kind who wanted to make sure she could protect herself when he was not around. The silence stretched between them. Kate could feel Nathan's questions pressing against her, all the things he wanted to ask and had been holding back out of respect for her privacy. But she could also see something else in his eyes. Respect. Admiration, even. "We need to talk," Nathan said finally. He moved to the fireplace and began building up the fire against the coming evening chill. I have been patient. I have not pressed you for answers, but that wolf could have been a man just as easily. And if you are in danger, if someone is coming for you, I need to know what I am dealing with. Kate felt the familiar war inside her. Trust and fear, pulling in opposite directions. 3 days ago, she had been dying beneath a juniper tree. This man had saved her life, had fed her and sheltered her and asked nothing in return. He deserved the truth, or at least some portion of it. She sat down at the rough table and placed the Colt carefully on the wood. "You were a deputy sheriff," she said, "so you know about criminals, know about men who operate outside the law." "I have some experience," Nathan said dryly. "What about men who operate above the law? Men with power and position who use outlaws to do their dirty work?" Nathan went still. His eyes, which had been focused on the fire, snapped to her face. "Keep talking." Kate took a deep breath. "My father was not a farmer heading to Oregon. He was a Pinkerton detective. He was investigating a series of wagon train robberies across the territory. Robberies that always targeted settlers carrying gold or valuables. Robberies where no one was left alive to tell the tale. And your wagon train was attacked." Kate felt her throat tighten, but she pushed through. "A gang led by a man named Silas Kincaid. They killed everyone. My mother, my father, the other families traveling with us. I survived because I played dead and they did not check carefully enough." Nathan's jaw had gone tight. "Kincaid. I know that name. You should. He is on every wanted poster between here and Denver, but he is not the one my father was really investigating." Nathan waited. "There is someone else. Someone in a position of authority who is using Kincaid's gang to clear settlers off valuable land. My father was close to proving it when we were attacked." She touched the satchel at her side. "That is what is in this bag. My father's ledger. Names, dates, amounts. Everything he spent 3 years gathering. The evidence that could bring down the whole conspiracy." Nathan was quiet for a long moment. Then he stood and crossed to the wall where the bent badge hung. He took it down and stared at it in the firelight. "3 years ago," he said slowly, "I was part of a posse chasing outlaws who had robbed a bank in Silverton. We tracked them into the mountains, caught up to them at a narrow pass." He paused, and Kate saw his hands trembling slightly. "There was a gunfight. I saw one of the outlaws and fired. But I did not see the boy he was using as a shield, a hostage, 12 years old. My bullet went through them both." Kate felt her heart clench. "Nathan. His name was Samuel. He was the son of a rancher from the valley. I killed him." Nathan's voice was flat, emotionless, but Kate could see the pain beneath the surface. "I resigned the next day. I could not wear this badge knowing what I had done. I have been out here ever since, running from it, hiding from it. But it does not go away." Kate stood and moved to stand beside him. "You are not a monster, Nathan. You made a mistake in an impossible situation." He looked at her, and for the first time, she saw vulnerability in those brown eyes. The same vulnerability she felt every time she thought about her parents. "That is what Judge Hale said," Nathan murmured. "He was the only one who did not judge me. He said these things happen in dangerous work." Kate felt a chill run down her spine. Judge Hale. Solomon Hale. Circuit judge for the territory. He has been good to me these past 3 years. Checked in on me, made sure I was doing all right. Solomon Hale. The name crashed through Kate like a thunderclap. She knew that name. It was in her father's ledger. Page after page of references to a Judge H., someone connected to every suspicious land transfer in the county. Her father had written in the margin of one entry, "Judge H., investigate further, maybe the highest link." Kate's mouth went dry. Nathan had no idea. He had spent 3 years trusting a man who might very well be the mastermind behind the conspiracy that killed her parents. "What is it?" Nathan was watching her face. "You look like you have seen a ghost." Kate forced herself to breathe. "It is nothing. I am tired." "It has been a long day." Nathan did not look convinced, but he let it go. "Get some rest. We will talk more tomorrow." He moved toward the door, but Kate caught his arm. "Nathan." She waited until he met her eyes. "Thank you for telling me about Samuel, for trusting me with that." He managed a small smile that did not quite reach his eyes. "I figure we are both running from something. Maybe that is why we found each other." He went out to the porch, and Kate was left alone with a truth she could not share. The man Nathan trusted most, the man who had comforted him in his darkest hour, was quite possibly the man responsible for murdering her family. And if she told Nathan now, before she had proof, he might not believe her. Worse, he might accidentally warn Hale that someone was onto him. Kate sat down on the bed and pulled the satchel into her lap. Her father's ledger was heavy with the weight of secrets. Secrets that had gotten him killed. Secrets that could get her killed too if she was not careful. But they were also secrets that could bring down a corrupt man and bring justice to everyone he had wronged, including Samuel. Kate did not know it yet, but Hale had been the one to orchestrate the robbery Nathan's posse had chased. The robbery where Samuel died. If she could prove Hale's involvement, she could give Nathan something more valuable than sympathy. She could give him the truth. She had not eaten a bite in nearly a week. This cowboy had cooked for her and watched her heal. Now it was time for her to return the favor. Nathan Cole deserved to know who his enemies really were, and Kate Morrow was going to be the one to tell him. A week after Nathan found her beneath the juniper tree, Kate was strong enough to ride. Her body had responded well to the regular meals and rest. The burns on her skin had faded to pink patches that would eventually heal completely. She could walk without trembling now, could help with chores around the cabin, could even chop wood if she took frequent breaks. But the real healing was happening inside her. In the quiet evenings by the fire, she and Nathan had begun to talk, really talk, about their pasts, their fears, their hopes for the future. He told her about growing up on a hardscrabble farm in Kansas, about coming west to make his fortune, about the pride he had felt the day he pinned on a deputy's badge, and she told him what she could, about her childhood in Chicago, about her father's work for the Pinkerton Agency, about the day he had taught her to fire her first pistol at the age of 14. She did not tell him about Judge Hale. Not yet. She needed proof first. She needed to see the courthouse records, compare them to her father's ledger, build a case that even a skeptical jury could not ignore, which meant she needed to go to Silverton. "I think I am ready," she told Nathan over breakfast. "To go into town, I mean. I should see a doctor, make sure everything is healing properly." Nathan studied her face. "That is not the only reason you want to go. No." She met his eyes. "There are things I need to check. Records at the courthouse that might confirm what my father suspected. Kate, if whoever killed your parents has connections in Silverton, I know." She touched the satchel that never left her side. "But I have to try. My father died for this information. I cannot just let it go." Nathan was quiet for a long moment. Then he nodded. "All right, but we do this my way. You stay close to me. You do not talk to anyone you do not have to. And if I say we leave, we leave. No arguments. Agreed." They saddled Rosie and rode out as the sun climbed over the eastern mountains. The trail to Silverton wound through valleys thick with pine and aspen. Kate had walked some of this country during her desperate flight from the massacre, but she had been too focused on survival to notice its beauty. Now, from the back of a horse with her arms around Nathan's waist, she could appreciate the grandeur of the Colorado high country. "Tell me about Silverton," she said as they rode. "Mining town, started as a silver strike about 10 years ago. Most of the easy silver is gone now, but enough people stayed to build something permanent. About 500 folks, give or take. General store, saloon, boarding house, church. And the courthouse? Nathan's shoulders tensed slightly. County seat for the whole region. Judge Hale presides there when he is not riding circuit to other towns. Kate filed that information away. Is he there now? Should be. He usually spends the first week of each month in Silverton handling local cases. Good. That meant she might be able to get a look at the man without seeming suspicious. Size him up. See if he matched the monster she had built in her imagination. They crested a ridge, and Silverton spread out before them in the valley below. It was larger than Kate had expected. A main street lined with wooden buildings, some of them 2 stories tall. A church steeple rising white against the green mountains. Horses and wagons moving along the dirt roads. People going about their daily business without any idea that a murderer might be living among them. Remember, Nathan said, stay close. They rode down into town at an easy pace. Kate noticed how people greeted Nathan as they passed. Tips of hats, nods of recognition, calls of welcome. Despite his 3 years of isolation, the people of Silverton clearly still held him in high regard. "Nathan Cole," a woman's voice called out, "as I live and breathe." Kate looked up to see a small, formidable woman standing on the porch of a 2-story building. A sign above the door read, "Hawkins Boarding House." The woman had gray hair pulled back in a severe bun and eyes that seemed to take in everything at once. "Mrs. Hawkins," Nathan said, pulling Rosie to a stop. "It has been a while." 3 years is more than a while. The woman's sharp gaze moved to Kate. "And who is this?" "A friend. She needs a room and some clean clothes if you have them." Mrs. Hawkins studied Kate for a long moment. Kate felt those keen eyes taking in her worn dress, her healing skin, the satchel clutched against her chest. "You look like you have been through hell, child," Mrs. Hawkins said. "Something like that." The older woman nodded once. "I have a room, and I have clothes that should fit well enough. Come inside." She turned and went into the boarding house without waiting for a response. Nathan helped Kate down from the horse. "Martha Hawkins," he said quietly. "She ran an army hospital during the war. Saw things that would make most men faint. If she says this house is safe, she means it. Can I trust her? More than most anyone else in this town." Nathan paused. "But be careful what you say, even to her. The less people know, the safer everyone is." They followed Mrs. Hawkins inside. The boarding house was clean and comfortable, far nicer than Kate had expected from a frontier town. Mrs. Hawkins led them up a narrow staircase to a small room with a window overlooking the street. "Hot water will be ready in an hour," Mrs. Hawkins said. "There are clothes in the wardrobe. Dinner is at 6. Questions can wait until you are fed and rested." She left without ceremony, closing the door behind her. Kate sank onto the bed. The mattress was soft, a luxury after days of sleeping on Nathan's narrow cot. "You should rest," Nathan said. "I will go see about that doctor. Come find me at the saloon when you're ready." Nathan. Kate caught his hand before he could leave. "Be careful." He gave her a small smile. "Always am." Then he was gone, and Kate was alone with her thoughts. She waited until she heard his boots on the stairs, then went to the window and looked down at the street below. Silverton. The town where her father's investigation had led. The town where a corrupt judge held court and outlaws roamed free. The town where answers waited, if she was brave enough to find them. Kate opened her satchel and pulled out the ledger. She needed to get to the courthouse, needed to look at land transfer records and compare them to her father's notes. But she could not just walk in and start asking questions. She needed a plan. She was still working on that plan an hour later when a knock came at the door. Kate tensed. Her hand moved to the Colt Nathan had given her, still tucked in the satchel. "Miss Bishop?" It was Mrs. Hawkins's voice. "Your bathwater is ready, and there is someone downstairs who wants to meet you." Kate's heart stuttered. "Who?" "Judge Hale. He heard Nathan was in town with a young lady. He wanted to welcome you to Silverton personally." Kate closed her eyes and forced herself to breathe. This was it. The man she had traveled hundreds of miles to find. The man responsible for her parents' deaths. He was downstairs right now, waiting to meet her. "Tell him I will be down shortly," Kate said, keeping her voice steady. "I just need a moment to freshen up. Take your time, dear. He is a patient man." Footsteps receded down the hallway. Kate looked at herself in the small mirror hanging on the wall. She saw a woman who had survived starvation and exposure and the murder of everyone she loved. A woman who had been saved by a stranger's kindness and nursed back to health by his careful attention. She had not eaten a bite in nearly a week. A cowboy had cooked for her and watched her heal. Now she had to face the man who had made her an orphan. Kate tucked the satchel under the mattress, hidden from casual view. She smoothed her borrowed dress, pinched color into her cheeks, and descended the stairs to meet her enemy. Judge Solomon Hale was everything she had not expected. He was tall and distinguished, with silver hair and a warm smile that reached his eyes. His clothes were well tailored but not ostentatious. He looked like exactly what he claimed to be: a respected public servant, a pillar of the community, a man you could trust. "Miss Bishop," he said, rising from his chair as Kate entered the parlor. "What a pleasure to meet you. Nathan has told me about your ordeal." Kate forced a smile. "Judge Hale, it is kind of you to welcome a stranger." "Nonsense." He took her hand and held it between both of his. "Any friend of Nathan's is a friend of mine. That boy's been through so much. It does my heart good to see him coming back to town, rejoining the living. He was good." Kate had to give him that. If she had not read her father's ledger, if she had not known about the pattern of robberies and suspicious land transfers, she might have been taken in by his performance. But she knew, and knowing made all the difference. "You have familiar eyes, Miss Bishop," Judge Hale said, studying her face. "I swear I have met someone with eyes just like yours." Kate's blood ran cold. Did he recognize her? Had he seen her somewhere before, perhaps in a photograph her father carried? "You must be mistaken, Your Honor," she said smoothly. "This is my first time in these parts." Judge Hale smiled. "Must be so. Well, welcome to Silverton. If there is anything I can do to make your stay more comfortable, please do not hesitate to ask." "Actually, there is one thing." Kate saw an opening and took it. "I am interested in local history. I was hoping to visit the courthouse, look at some old records, land transfers, that sort of thing. Would that be possible?" Something flickered in Judge Hale's eyes. It was there and gone in an instant, but Kate caught it. Surprise and something else. Suspicion. "Of course," he said, his smile never wavering. "The courthouse is open to the public during business hours. I would be happy to give you a personal tour. That would be lovely." Judge Hale held her hand a moment longer than necessary, his eyes searching her face. Then he released her and stepped back. "I must be going. Court business, you understand. But I hope to see you again soon, Miss Bishop. Silverton could use more cultured young ladies." He left, and Kate felt the tension drain from her body. She had just met the man who had ordered her parents' deaths. She had looked into his eyes and smiled, and played the part of an innocent stranger. And she had survived. But she had also seen the calculation behind his warmth. Judge Hale was no fool. He had sensed something off about her, even if he could not put his finger on what. Kate needed to be more careful, and she needed to find proof fast before Hale decided she was a threat. She was heading for the door when movement outside the window caught her eye. A man was walking into the saloon across the street. Tall, broad-shouldered, with a long scar running from his forehead to his right cheek. Kate's heart stopped. She knew that face. She had seen it illuminated by firelight as he dragged her mother from the wagon. She had heard his laughter as he put a bullet in her father's chest. Virgil, Kincaid's lieutenant, one of the men who had massacred her wagon train. He was here, in Silverton, walking around like he had every right to be. Kate backed away from the window, her hand pressed against her mouth to keep from screaming. They were here. The killers were here. And now she was trapped in a town where her enemies walked free, and the law itself was corrupt. Kate fled back to her room and locked the door behind her. Her hands were shaking as she pulled the satchel from beneath the mattress and clutched it to her chest. She needed Nathan. She needed to warn him. She needed to get out of this town before someone recognized her. But she also needed proof. Without proof, she was just a hysterical woman making wild accusations against a respected judge. No one would believe her. Kate sat on the bed and forced herself to think. She had come too far to run now. Her parents had died for the information in this ledger. If she fled, their deaths would mean nothing. She had to stay, had to be smart, had to find a way to expose Judge Hale and Kincaid's gang before they realized who she really was. The cowboy had cooked for her. He had watched her heal. Now it was time for her to fight. Kate Morrow was done running. Kate found Nathan at the saloon, nursing a whiskey, and watching the room with the careful eyes of a man who had worn a badge. "We need to leave," she said, sliding into the chair across from him. "Right now." Nathan read her face in an instant. "What happened?" "Not here, outside." He left coins on the table and followed her into the street. They walked quickly, heads down, until they reached a quiet spot behind the livery stable where no one could overhear. "Talk to me," Nathan said. "One of the men who killed my parents is in that saloon. The man with the scar on his face. His name is Virgil. He is Kincaid's lieutenant." Nathan's expression hardened. "You are sure?" "I will never forget his face." Kate's voice shook despite her efforts to control it. "He dragged my mother from the wagon. He laughed while he shot my father." "I am sure." Nathan was quiet for a long moment. Then he said, "Did he see you?" "I do not think so. I spotted him through the window and came to find you." "Good. We need to get you out of town. If Virgil is here, Kincaid cannot be far behind." "No." Nathan blinked. "No." Kate straightened her spine. "I did not survive a week in the wilderness to run away now. I came here to find evidence against the man behind these killings. I am not leaving until I have it. Kate, this is not a game. These men will kill you if they find out who you are." "I know." She met his eyes. "But my father died for this. My mother died for this. If I run now, everything they sacrificed means nothing." The frustration on Nathan's face warred with something that looked like admiration. "You are the most stubborn woman I have ever met. I prefer the word determined." Nathan ran a hand through his hair. "All right. But we do this smart. You stay at the boarding house. You do not go anywhere alone. And tonight, you tell me everything, the full truth, not the half version you have been giving me." Kate hesitated. The full truth meant telling him about Judge Hale. It meant watching the betrayal in his eyes when he learned that the man who comforted him after Samuel's death was the same man who ordered the robberies that tore Nathan's life apart. But Nathan was right. They were past the point of half-truths. If they were going to survive this, they needed to trust each other completely. "Tonight," she agreed, "I will tell you everything." They returned to the boarding house separately, Kate through the front door and Nathan through the back. "Mrs." Hawkins gave them both knowing looks but asked no questions. The afternoon passed slowly. Kate stayed in her room, going through her father's ledger page by page, organizing the evidence into a coherent timeline. By the time the sun began to set, she had a clear picture of what her father had discovered. For 3 years, wagon trains carrying valuables had been ambushed in the territory. The survivors, if there were any, always reported the same thing: a gang led by a man matching Silas Kincaid's description. The robberies followed a pattern. The targets were always settlers who had just purchased land through the Silverton courthouse. Her father's theory, supported by months of investigation, was that someone in the courthouse was tipping off Kincaid about vulnerable targets, that someone was using the gang to clear settlers off valuable land, then acquiring that land through fraudulent transfers. The name that appeared most often in connection with those transfers was Judge Solomon Hale. Nathan knocked on her door at sunset. "Mrs. Hawkins says dinner is ready. I am not hungry." Nathan came inside and closed the door behind him. "Kate, you need to eat. You are still recovering." She looked up from the ledger. "You sound like my mother." "Your mother sounds like a smart woman." "Was." Kate felt the familiar ache in her chest. She was a smart woman. Nathan sat down on the bed beside her. "I am sorry. I did not mean to. It is all right. Kate closed the ledger. You are right. I need to eat. I need to stay strong for what is coming. They went downstairs together. Mrs. Hawkins had prepared a simple meal of roast chicken and vegetables, but to Kate it tasted like a feast. She had not eaten a bite in nearly a week before Nathan found her. Now every meal felt like a gift. After dinner, when the other boarders had retired to their rooms, Nathan and Kate sat in the parlor with the fire crackling low. Mrs. Hawkins brought them coffee, and then disappeared with a knowing nod. All right, Nathan said. The full truth. Kate took a deep breath. She told him everything. About her father's 3 years of investigation. About the pattern of robberies and suspicious land transfers. About the name that appeared again and again in her father's notes. Judge Solomon Hale. Nathan's face went white. That is not possible. I know you trust him. Kate spoke gently, knowing how much this would hurt. I know he was kind to you after what happened with Samuel. But Nathan, my father was one of the best investigators the Pinkertons ever employed. He did not make accusations lightly. But Hale was the one who told me not to blame myself. He was the one who said... Nathan stopped. His eyes had gone distant, his mind clearly working through memories he had buried years ago. He was the one who suggested I resign, Nathan said slowly. He said I needed time away from the job, time to heal. I thought he was being kind. Kate waited. But if he knew about my guilt, if he knew I would jump at any excuse to leave... Nathan's hands clenched into fists. He was getting rid of me. Because I was too honest. Because I might have stumbled onto something if I kept investigating. The old sheriff. What happened to him? Retired suddenly, about 6 months after I left. Said his health was failing. Nathan's jaw tightened. His replacement, Sheriff Dalton, is one of Hale's men. Everyone knows it, but no one says anything because Hale controls the court. Kate reached out and took Nathan's hand. I am sorry. I know this is hard to hear. Nathan looked down at their intertwined fingers. 3 years, he said. I have spent 3 years trusting a man who might have orchestrated the robbery where Samuel died. Where I killed... He could not finish the sentence. Kate squeezed his hand. We do not know that for certain. My father's notes mention several robberies, but not that specific one. But Nathan, if Hale is connected to Kincaid, if he has been using the gang to clear settlers off their land, then justice for Samuel starts with exposing the truth. Nathan was quiet for a long time. The fire crackled. Outside, the wind picked up, rattling the windows. When he finally spoke, his voice was steady. What do you need? Evidence. My father's ledger is compelling, but it is circumstantial. We need testimony from someone in Kincaid's gang, or documents from the courthouse that prove the connection. The courthouse. Nathan nodded slowly. Hale offered to give you a tour. Kate felt a chill run down her spine. Yes, he did. That is suspicious in itself. If he has nothing to hide, why offer to personally escort you through public records? Maybe he wants to see what I am looking for. Or maybe he is testing me, seeing if I am a threat. Either way, we cannot trust him. Nathan stood and paced to the window. We need allies. People who know the truth or suspect it, but have been too afraid to speak. Is there anyone like that in Silverton? Nathan turned back to face her. There is one man, Elijah Stone. He is the blacksmith. Former Buffalo soldier. He and I were friends before I resigned. His wife died in a suspicious fire about 5 years ago. Suspicious how? She had seen something. A meeting between Hale and some strangers. Eli never had proof, but he always believed someone silenced her before she could talk. Kate felt hope kindle in her chest. Can we trust him? If we cannot trust Eli, we cannot trust anyone. Then we talk to him tomorrow. Nathan nodded. But tonight, you rest. You've been through enough. He moved toward the door, but Kate stood and caught his arm. Nathan. He turned. They were standing close now, closer than they had ever been. Kate could see the firelight reflected in his brown eyes, could feel the warmth radiating from his body. Thank you, she said. for believing me. I know it cannot be easy, hearing all this about a man you trusted." Nathan reached up and touched her face. His fingers were rough from years of hard work, but his touch was gentle. "You survived a week alone in country that kills strong men," he said softly. "You fought off a wolf with a single shot. You came face to face with a man who murdered your parents and did not flinch. Kate Morrow, you are the bravest woman I have ever met." Kate felt tears prick at her eyes. "I do not feel brave. Most of the time I just feel scared. That is what bravery is, being scared and doing it anyway." They looked at each other for a long moment. The fire crackled, the wind howled, and then, without either of them quite knowing who moved first, they were kissing. It was gentle at first, tentative. Two broken people finding comfort in each other. But then Kate's arms went around Nathan's neck, and his hands pulled her closer, and the kiss deepened into something that felt like hope. When they finally pulled apart, both of them were breathing hard. "I have wanted to do that since the moment you pointed that gun at the wolf," Nathan said. Kate laughed, surprised by the sound of her own joy. "You have terrible timing. Story of my life." They stood holding each other as the fire burned low. Tomorrow they would face enemies and danger and the possibility of death. But tonight, for just a few precious hours, they had found something worth fighting for. Each other. Kate fell asleep that night with a smile on her face and Nathan's kiss still warm on her lips. She had not eaten a bite in nearly a week. This cowboy had cooked for her and watched her heal, and somewhere along the way, she had fallen in love with him. Tomorrow would bring battles, but tonight, she had peace. The attack came 3 nights later. Kate and Nathan had spent the intervening days gathering information and building alliances. Elijah Stone, the blacksmith, had listened to their story with grim recognition. "I knew it," he had said, his dark eyes burning with long, suppressed anger. "I knew Hale was dirty. My wife saw something she should not have, and a week later our house burned down with her inside it. I could never prove anything, but I knew." Eli became their first ally. Then came Martha Hawkins, who revealed that she had suspected Hale for years but lacked anyone brave enough to stand with her. Then Marcus Webb, the current deputy, who had followed Nathan into town on Hale's orders, and ended up hearing the whole story. "I always knew something was wrong," Marcus had said, his young face pale with shock. "The way Hale always seemed to know which settlers were carrying valuables. The way Sheriff Dalton never pursued Kincaid too hard. I did not want to see it." "But now you do," Nathan had said. Marcus had unpinned his badge and set it on the table. "I cannot wear this if it belongs to Hale. Tell me what to do." They had formed a plan. Kate would accept Judge Hale's offer of a courthouse tour, using the opportunity to photograph key documents with a small camera Eli had acquired from a traveling salesman. Meanwhile, Nathan and Marcus would ride to Denver to contact the U.S. Marshal, someone with authority beyond Hale's reach. It was a good plan, careful, methodical, the kind of plan that might actually work. Kincaid destroyed it in a single night. Kate was in her room at the boarding house going through her father's ledger one more time when she heard Rosie whinny in alarm from the stable outside. She went to the window and saw shadows moving in the darkness. 3 men, at least, approaching from different directions. The moonlight glinted off drawn pistols. "Nathan," she breathed. He was downstairs in the parlor playing cards with Eli to pass the time. Kate grabbed her Colt and ran. She reached the bottom of the stairs just as the front door crashed open. 2 men burst through, guns raised. Kate recognized one of them immediately. Virgil, the scarred lieutenant who had murdered her parents. "There she is!" Virgil shouted. "Kincaid wants her alive." Kate fired without thinking. Her bullet caught the second man in the shoulder, spinning him around. Nathan was already moving, overturning the card table to use as cover, his own pistol barking in the confined space. Eli grabbed a fire poker and swung it at Virgil's head. The outlaw ducked, but the distraction gave Kate time to retreat up the stairs. "Get to the roof," Nathan shouted. "There is a ladder on the back side. What about you? I will be right behind you. Go!" Kate ran. Behind her, she heard more gunshots, breaking glass, men shouting. She burst onto the second-floor landing just as a figure appeared at the top of the stairs. A third outlaw coming from the back. He raised his gun. Kate fired first. The man fell backward, tumbling down the stairs he had just climbed. She kept running, reaching the attic access and climbing the narrow ladder to the roof hatch. The night air hit her face like a slap, cold and clean after the gunsmoke below. She could see the whole town from up here. Lights were coming on in windows as the gunfire woke the residents of Silverton. In the distance, she heard hoofbeats. More riders coming. Kate. She turned. Nathan was climbing through the hatch, blood streaming from a cut on his forehead, but otherwise unharmed. "Are you hurt?" "I will live." He pulled her toward the edge of the roof, where a wooden ladder led down to the alley. "We need to move. Kincaid sent a scouting party. When they do not report back, he will send everyone." They climbed down the ladder and found Eli waiting with 3 horses. "Mrs. Hawkins is getting the other boarders out the back," Eli said. "We need to ride." "Where?" "Nathan's cabin," Kate said. "It is defensible. We can hold them off until help arrives." "Help from where?" Nathan asked grimly. "Marcus left for Denver yesterday. If he rode through the night, he should reach the marshal by tomorrow. We just need to survive until then." They mounted up and rode hard into the darkness, leaving the chaos of Silverton behind them. The cabin appeared as a black shape against the star-filled sky. Nathan had not been back since he brought Kate into town a week ago, but nothing had changed. The same rough timber walls, the same stone chimney, the same sense of isolation that had been both prison and refuge for 3 years. Now it would be a fortress. They worked quickly, boarding up windows, positioning furniture as barricades, distributing weapons and ammunition. Mrs. Hawkins arrived an hour later with Deputy Marcus's spare guns and a grim expression. "They burned my boarding house," she said. "Hale's men. They said it was an accident, a lamp knocked over in the confusion, but I saw the kerosene." Kate felt rage burning in her chest. "He is destroying evidence, silencing witnesses. He is scared." Nathan loaded his rifle with practiced efficiency. "Scared men make mistakes. We just need to survive long enough for him to make one." Dawn came gray and cold. Kate stood at the window, watching the trail that led down from the northern ridges. Somewhere out there, Kincaid and his gang were regrouping, planning their next attack. Beside her, Nathan kept vigil with the patience of a man who had waited 3 years for redemption. "They will come today," he said. "Kincaid cannot afford to let you testify. You are the only witness to the massacre who survived. I know. Are you afraid?" Kate considered the question. "Terrified. But I was afraid when I played dead while they murdered my family. I was afraid when I walked for a week through the wilderness with no food and no water. Fear has not killed me yet." Nathan took her hand. "Whatever happens today, I want you to know something." "What?" "Finding you was the best thing that ever happened to me. You gave me a reason to stop hiding, a reason to fight, a reason to live." Kate squeezed his hand. "You found me dying under a tree. You cooked for me. You watched me heal. Nathan Cole, you saved my life. And then you made me want to keep living it." They kissed, a brief and desperate press of lips that said everything words could not. Then Eli's voice came from the back of the cabin. "Riders coming. At least 8 of them." Nathan released Kate's hand and picked up his rifle. "Time to end this." The battle was brutal. Kincaid's men attacked from 3 directions at once, laying down covering fire while others tried to approach the cabin. Nathan and Eli held the front windows while Kate and Mrs. Hawkins defended the back. Kate had never been in a real gunfight before. The noise was overwhelming, the acrid smell of gunpowder filling her lungs, the terrifying whine of bullets passing inches from her head. But her father had trained her well. She breathed, aimed, fired. Breathed, aimed, fired. Again and again until her arms ached and her ears rang. An outlaw tried to break down the back door. Kate shot him through the wood. Another appeared at a window Mrs. Hawkins had thought was secure. The older woman hit him with a cast-iron skillet, then finished him with his own dropped pistol. "Reload!" Nathan shouted, and Kate ducked below the window to push fresh cartridges into her Colt. When she rose again, she saw him, Silas Kincaid himself, a big man with a black beard and cold eyes, sitting on a horse at the edge of the clearing, directing his men with hand signals. Patient, calculating. He did not look like a monster. He looked like a businessman assessing a problem. Kate aimed and fired. The bullet went wide, clipping the branch of a tree above Kincaid's head. He did not flinch. Instead, he turned and looked directly at her window. Their eyes met across 50 yards of killing ground. Kincaid smiled. Then he raised one hand, and his remaining men began to fall back. "He is retreating," Eli called. "Number." Nathan's voice was grim. "He is waiting for reinforcements. Sheriff Dalton must be on his way with a posse. They only had a few hours before the full weight of the corrupt law came down on them. A few hours to survive." Kate looked at the bodies scattered around the clearing, at the bullet holes in the cabin walls, at the blood on Nathan's shirt from a wound she had not seen him take. She had not eaten a bite in nearly a week. A cowboy had cooked for her and watched her heal. And now they were going to die together in his cabin, surrounded by enemies, because she had refused to let her parents' murders go unavenged. Number. Kate straightened her spine. She was not going to die here, none of them were. They had come too far and sacrificed too much to fail now. "Nathan!" She grabbed his arm. "We cannot wait for them to attack again. We need to take the fight to Silverton. Are you crazy? They have us surrounded. They have this cabin surrounded. But there is one thing Kincaid does not know." "What is that?" "That I have proof of everything. Names, dates, amounts. My father's ledger documents 3 years of Hale's crimes. If we can get that ledger to the people of Silverton, if we can make them see the truth, Kincaid loses his protection. The people are afraid. They will not stand against Hale. Then we give them a reason to stand." Kate felt the fire of determination burning in her chest. "We ride into town. We tell everyone what we know. We make Hale face justice in front of the community he has been betraying for years." Nathan stared at her. "That is either the bravest plan I have ever heard or the most foolish." "Probably both." Kate managed to smile. "But it is the only chance we have." Nathan was quiet for a long moment. Then he turned to Eli and Mrs. Hawkins. "You heard the lady. We ride to Silverton." Eli grinned. "About damn time." Mrs. Hawkins checked the load in her pistol. "Let us go make some noise." They slipped out the back of the cabin while Kincaid's men were still regrouping. 4 horses, 4 riders, one desperate plan. The future of Silverton would be decided before the sun set again. They reached Silverton at noon. The town was quiet, unnaturally so. Shutters were closed, streets were empty, and the only movement came from a few nervous horses tied outside the saloon. Word of the boarding house fire and the shootout at Nathan's cabin had clearly spread. The people were hiding, waiting to see which way the wind would blow. Kate and her allies rode straight down the center of Main Street, making no attempt to hide. Nathan led the way, his badge less status forgotten in the face of what needed to be done. Kate rode beside him, her father's satchel clutched against her chest. Behind them came Eli and Mrs. Hawkins, their weapons visible and ready. They stopped in front of the courthouse. Nathan dismounted and drew his pistol. Kate followed, her heart pounding but her hands steady. "I am Nathan Cole," Nathan shouted, his voice carrying across the empty street. "Former deputy of this town. I have evidence of crimes committed by Judge Solomon Hale. Anyone who wants to hear the truth, come out now." For a long moment, nothing happened. The wind blew dust along the street. A dog barked somewhere in the distance. Then a door creaked open. A face appeared in a window. One by one, the people of Silverton began to emerge from their hiding places, drawn by curiosity or courage, or simply the need to know what was happening. And then Judge Solomon Hale himself appeared on the courthouse steps. He was dressed in his judicial robes, every inch the picture of authority and respectability. His face was calm, his voice steady as he addressed the gathering crowd. "Nathan." He spread his hands in a gesture of concern. "What is the meaning of this? You come into town with armed companions making wild accusations against a sitting judge. This is not the behavior of a reasonable man." Kate felt Nathan tense beside her. She knew how hard this was for him, facing down the man who had comforted him in his darkest hour. But he did not waver. "You know exactly what this is about, Hale." Nathan's voice was cold. "I have spent 3 years believing you were my friend, believing you understood what I went through. But you were just using me, were you not? Getting rid of an honest deputy so you could put your own man in the sheriff's office." Judge Hale's smile did not flicker. "These are serious accusations, Nathan. I hope you have evidence to back them up." "I do." Kate stepped forward, holding up her father's ledger. "My name is Catherine Morrow. My father was William Morrow, a Pinkerton detective. He spent 3 years investigating a series of wagon train robberies in this territory. Robberies organized by Silas Kincaid, but directed by someone in a position of power." She opened the ledger and began to read. June 15th, 1875. Henderson family robbed and murdered on the Silverton Trail. Property transferred to associates of Judge Solomon Hale 3 weeks later. "Miss Morrow," Hale began. Kate kept reading. September 3rd, 1875. Patterson wagon train ambushed near Black Canyon. 12 dead. Land claim filed by Kincaid under assumed name, approved by Judge Solomon Hale. "This is ridiculous," Hale said, but his voice had lost some of its smoothness. Kate read on. March 20th, 1876. Morrow investigation wagon train attacked. My mother, my father, and 6 other innocent people murdered. Because my father was getting too close to the truth. Because he was about to expose the man behind it all." She closed the ledger and looked directly at Judge Hale. "You." The crowd had grown larger now. Kate could see fear in their faces, but also something else. Recognition. Many of them had lost friends or family to the robberies. Many had suspected something was wrong but had been too afraid to speak. Now they were listening. Judge Hale straightened his robes. "This is slander. The ravings of a hysterical woman who survived a traumatic experience. I will not dignify these accusations with a response. Then let me add mine." Everyone turned. Elijah Stone stepped forward, his massive blacksmith's arms crossed over his chest. 5 years ago, my wife Sarah saw something she should not have. A meeting between Judge Hale and men I now know were Kincaid's gang. A week later, our house burned down with her inside it. I was told it was an accident, but I knew better. I just could not prove it. "Eli," Hale's voice was warning. "You silenced my wife," Eli continued. "You silenced dozens of good people who got in your way. But you are not going to silence us. Not today." Mrs. Hawkins spoke next. "He burned my boarding house last night. Tried to destroy evidence. Tried to kill witnesses. I saw his men pouring kerosene on the walls." The crowd's murmur grew louder. Kate could see the tide turning. People were looking at Judge Hale differently now, seeing past the robes and the respectability to the monster beneath. Then a new voice joined the chorus. "I have seen the evidence." Sheriff Dalton pushed through the crowd. The corrupt lawman looked haggard, his face pale and sweating. He stopped a few feet from Judge Hale and turned to address the people. "I have been taking orders from this man for 3 years. I told myself I was just following the law, but I knew. God help me. I knew what he was doing." "Dalton." Hale's voice had gone cold. "Think very carefully about what you say next." Dalton looked at him with something like pity. "It is over, Your Honor. The marshal is on his way from Denver. Deputy Webb rode all night to reach him. There is nowhere left to run." Judge Hale's mask finally cracked. His face twisted with rage as he realized his empire was crumbling around him. "You fools," he spat. "You think this changes anything? I am the law here. I have been the law for 10 years, and I will not be brought down by a collection of misfits and malcontents." He drew a pistol from beneath his robes. Kate saw Nathan move before she registered what was happening. He threw himself in front of her just as Hale fired. The bullet meant for Kate struck Nathan in the shoulder, spinning him around. "Nathan!" Kate caught him as he fell. Hale turned to run, but Eli was faster. The blacksmith's massive fist connected with the judge's jaw, dropping him like a stone. And then from the edge of town came the sound everyone had been dreading. Hoofbeats, a lot of them. "Kincaid!" someone shouted. "Kincaid is coming!" Kate looked up from Nathan's wounded form to see riders pouring into the street. 8, 10, 12 men, all armed, all wearing the hard faces of killers. At their head rode Silas Kincaid himself. He pulled his horse to a stop and surveyed the scene before him. Judge Hale unconscious on the ground, Sheriff Dalton standing with the townspeople instead of against them, and Kate Morrow, the witness who would not die, cradling the wounded body of Nathan Cole. "Well now," Kincaid said, "this is a mess." He drew his pistol and aimed it at Kate. "Your father was a stubborn man. Seems like it runs in the family. But this ends here, Miss Morrow. No more running, no more hiding. Time to join your parents." Kate stared down the barrel of his gun and felt no fear, only a cold, burning fury. "I am not running," she said. "I have never been running. I have been hunting, and now I have found what I was looking for." She raised her own pistol. They fired at the same time. Kincaid's bullet went wide, thrown off by the sudden movement of his horse as gunfire erupted around them. The townspeople of Silverton, emboldened by the revelations they had just witnessed, had turned on the gang with whatever weapons they could find. Kate's bullet did not miss. It struck Kincaid in the chest, knocking him backward off his horse. He hit the ground hard and did not move. The battle that followed was brief and brutal. Outnumbered and leaderless, Kincaid's remaining men tried to flee but found their escape routes blocked by armed citizens. One by one, they surrendered or died. When the gun smoke cleared, Silverton belonged to its people once more. Kate knelt beside Nathan, pressing her hand against his wounded shoulder to slow the bleeding. "Stay with me," she begged. "Nathan, please. Stay with me." He opened his eyes and managed a weak smile. "That was one hell of a shot," he whispered. Kate laughed through her tears. "My father was a good teacher, so I have heard." She bent and kissed him, tasting blood and gunpowder and hope. Around them, the town of Silverton began to rebuild. The U.S. Marshal arrived 2 days later. His name was Thomas Garrett, a lean man with silver hair and eyes that had seen too much. He listened to the testimonies, examined the evidence, and watched as Silverton citizens came forward one by one to share their stories. Judge Hale sat in his own jail cell, stripped of his robes and his power. The arrogance had not left him entirely, but it was tempered now by the knowledge that there would be no escape. Marshal Garrett conducted a thorough investigation. He found documents in Hale's office that confirmed everything in Kate's father's ledger and more. Land transfers signed under duress, bribes paid to territorial officials, a ledger of his own detailing payments to Kincaid's gang for services rendered. The evidence was overwhelming. The trial was held in the very courthouse where Hale had dispensed his corrupt justice for a decade. But this time, a circuit judge from Denver presided, a man with no ties to the conspiracy. Kate testified for 3 hours. She told the court about her father's investigation, about the massacre of her wagon train, about her desperate flight through the wilderness. She told them about the cowboy who had found her dying under a tree, who had cooked for her and watched her heal. She had not eaten a bite in nearly a week, she said, her voice steady despite the emotion threatening to overwhelm her. "I was ready to die. And then Nathan Cole saved my life. Not just by feeding me and sheltering me, but by helping me find the courage to fight for justice," Nathan testified next. He told the court about his years as a deputy, about the shooting that had driven him to resign, about his growing suspicion that Hale had manipulated him from the beginning. "I trusted him," Nathan said. "I trusted him more than I trusted myself, and he used that trust to destroy lives." Eli Stone testified about his wife's murder. Martha Hawkins testified about the burning of her boarding house. Sheriff Dalton testified about the orders he had followed and the crimes he had helped cover up. One by one, the people of Silverton stood up and told their truth. The verdict was never in doubt. Judge Solomon Hale was found guilty of conspiracy to commit murder, robbery, corruption of public office, and a dozen other charges. He was sentenced to 25 years at the Colorado Territorial Prison in Canyon City, with no possibility of parole. Sheriff Dalton received 5 years at the county jail for his role in the conspiracy. His cooperation and testimony had earned him leniency, but not freedom. The surviving members of Kincaid's gang were sentenced to hang. The execution was scheduled for the following month. Justice, imperfect but real, had finally come to Silverton. On the day of Hale's sentencing, Kate stood on the courthouse steps and watched as they led him away in chains. The man who had ordered her parents' deaths, who had terrorized a territory for a decade, was finally going to pay for his crimes. It does not bring them back. Kate turned. Nathan stood beside her, his arm still in a sling from Hale's bullet, but his eyes clear and strong. "No," she agreed. "But it means their deaths were not in vain. They died trying to expose the truth. And now the truth is known." Nathan took her hand. "What will you do now?" Kate looked out at the town of Silverton. The buildings damaged in the fighting were already being repaired. The people were going about their business with a lightness she had not seen before. The weight of fear finally lifted from their shoulders. "I think I might stay," she said. "There is work to be done here. Families who need help finding missing loved ones. Crimes that were never properly investigated. My father taught me everything he knew about detective work. It would be a shame to let those skills go to waste." Nathan smiled. "Silverton could use a good investigator, especially one who knows how to shoot. And what about you?" Kate turned to face him fully. "Will you stay?" "The town council offered me the sheriff position," Nathan said. "They want someone they can trust, someone who knows the law and is not afraid to enforce it. And I said I would think about it." Nathan reached out and touched her face, his rough fingers gentle against her cheek. "I spent 3 years running from what I did, hiding from my guilt. But you showed me that the only way to heal is to face it, to do better, to be better. So you are going to take the job." "I am going to take the job," Nathan confirmed, "on one condition." "What condition?" "That you help me. Partners in everything. The law, the investigations, and—" He paused, suddenly uncertain. "Everything else, if you will have me." Kate felt her heart swell. "Are you asking me to marry you, Nathan Cole?" "I reckon I am." His smile was shy but hopeful. "I know it is sudden. I know we have only known each other a few weeks, but those weeks have been the best of my life. You came to me dying, and I cooked for you and watched you heal. But the truth is, you healed me too. You gave me a reason to stop hiding and start living." Kate kissed him. "Yes," she said when they finally pulled apart. "Yes to all of it. The job, the partnership, the marriage. Yes." Nathan laughed and pulled her into his arms, and for a long moment they simply held each other while the town of Silverton bustled around them. They had both come to this place running from something. Now they would stay together, building something new. The weeks that followed were filled with work and healing. Nathan accepted the position of sheriff, pinning on a new badge to replace the one he had bent and abandoned 3 years earlier. This time the weight of it felt right. This time he was wearing it for the right reasons. Kate established herself as the territory's first female private investigator. The work was hard and sometimes dangerous, but it was also meaningful. She helped reunite families separated by the violence of the frontier. She investigated cold cases that the old, corrupt sheriff's office had ignored. She brought justice to people who had given up hope of ever receiving it. And in the quiet moments between cases, she and Nathan built a life together. The cabin where he had nursed her back to health became their home. Kate added curtains to the windows and flowers to the table, softening the rough edges without erasing the character. Nathan expanded the bookshelf to accommodate her volumes alongside his own. Eli Stone was appointed Justice of the Peace, a position that allowed him to finally see justice done in the territory. He performed their wedding ceremony on a beautiful autumn day, with the aspens turning gold on the mountainsides. The whole town attended. Martha Hawkins, who had rebuilt her boarding house bigger and better than before, brought the wedding cake. Deputy Marcus Webb served as Nathan's best man. The children of Silverton scattered flower petals along the church steps. Kate wore a simple white dress, nothing fancy, but Nathan looked at her like she was the most beautiful thing he had ever seen. "I promise to cook for you every day," he said during the vows. "I promise to stand beside you in every fight, and I promise to watch you heal and let you watch me heal, until we both become the best versions of ourselves." Kate smiled through her tears. "I promise to trust you, not because you are perfect, but because you are brave enough to be imperfect. I promise to fight alongside you, not behind you, and I promise to love you, not just because you saved my life, but because you gave me a life worth living." Eli pronounced them husband and wife, and Nathan kissed her with the whole town cheering. That night, as they sat on the porch of their cabin watching the stars wheel overhead, Kate reflected on everything that had led her to this moment. Her parents, murdered on a dusty trail by men who thought they were above the law. Her own desperate flight through the wilderness, starving and alone. The cowboy who had found her dying under a juniper tree, who had cooked for her and watched her heal. The battles fought and won. The truth finally exposed, the justice finally served. She had not eaten a bite in nearly a week, and now she had everything. "What are you thinking about?" Nathan asked, his arm warm around her shoulders. "My parents." Kate leaned into him. "I wish they could see this, see what their sacrifice led to. They know." Nathan kissed the top of her head. "Wherever they are, they know." Kate closed her eyes and let herself believe it. Tomorrow, there would be work to do. Cases to investigate, laws to enforce, a town to protect. But tonight she was simply a woman in love, sitting with her husband under the stars, grateful for every moment she had almost lost. She had not eaten a bite in nearly a week. This cowboy had cooked for her. He had watched her heal. And now they would spend the rest of their lives healing together. 1 year later, Kate stood at her parents' graves and smiled. She had brought their remains back to Silverton, burying them in the little cemetery on the hill overlooking the town. Nathan had helped her choose the spot, a peaceful place where the morning sun fell warm on the headstones and the wind carried the scent of wildflowers. The inscription was simple: William and Margaret Morrow, beloved parents. They died seeking justice. Kate placed fresh flowers on the graves, the same wildflowers that bloomed in the meadow near their cabin. "We did it, Papa," she said softly. "We found the truth. We brought them to justice. It took a while, and it was not easy, but we did it." She felt a hand on her shoulder. Nathan, standing behind her, his presence solid and reassuring. "Ready to go?" "Almost." Kate turned to face him. "I just wanted to tell them one more thing." She knelt beside the graves and touched the carved letters of her father's name. "I am happy," she whispered. "I found someone who loves me. Someone brave and kind and good. You would like him, Papa. You would approve." She stood and took Nathan's hand. "Now I'm ready." They walked down the hill together toward the town that had become their home. Silverton had changed in the years since Hale's fall. New businesses had opened. New families had arrived, drawn by the promise of honest law and fair dealing. The railroad was coming through, bringing progress and opportunity. But some things remained the same. Martha Hawkins still ran the best boarding house in the territory. Eli Stone still served justice with wisdom and compassion. And Sheriff Nathan Cole still walked the streets, keeping the peace with a steady hand and a fair heart. Kate had solved 17 cases in the past year. Missing persons found, crimes investigated, justice served. Word of her skills had spread, and people came from miles around to seek her help. She was Catherine Cole now, wife and partner and investigator. But she was still Kate Morrow, too, daughter of a Pinkerton detective, survivor of a massacre, The woman who had refused to let her parents' deaths be in vain. Inside. That evening, as the sun set over the mountains, Kate and Nathan sat on the porch of their cabin. The same porch where Nathan had slept that first night, giving her his bed, watching over her while she recovered from her ordeal. "Do you remember when you found me?" Kate asked. Nathan smiled. "Hard to forget. Half dead under a tree, clutching that satchel like your life depended on it." "It did. I know that now." They sat in comfortable silence, watching the colors change in the western sky. "I was so afraid," Kate said finally. "Not just of dying, but of failing. Of letting my parents down. Of letting their killer go free. But you did not. Because of you." Kate turned to look at him. "If you had not stopped, if you had ridden past and left me there." "I would never have done that," Nathan said firmly. "From the moment I saw you, I knew. I did not understand it then, but I knew. You were not just someone who needed help. You were someone I needed." Kate felt tears prick at her eyes, but they were happy tears now. Tears of gratitude and love. "I had not eaten a bite in nearly a week," she said. "And you cooked for me. You watched me heal. You gave me a reason to keep fighting." "You gave me the same," Nathan said. "I was dead inside before you came, going through the motions, waiting to die. But you made me want to live again." He pulled her close and kissed her. Around them, the world continued its turning. The sun set and the stars emerged, the same stars Nathan had taught her to navigate by on that first night together. The wind carried the scent of pine and wildflowers, the sounds of cattle settling for the night, the distant call of an owl beginning its hunt. It was beautiful. It was peaceful. It was home. Kate leaned her head on Nathan's shoulder and closed her eyes. She had lost so much: her parents, her old life, the innocence she had carried before the massacre. But she had gained something too: a purpose, a partner, a love that had been forged in fire and tempered by hardship. She had not eaten a bite in nearly a week. This cowboy had cooked for her. He had watched her heal, and in doing so, he had healed himself. They sat together on the porch, husband and wife, partners in every sense, watching the night deepen around them. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, new cases to solve, new wrongs to right, new battles to fight. But tonight they had peace. Tonight they had each other, and that was enough. That was everything. The story of the half-starved woman and the cowboy who saved her became something of a legend in Silverton, told and retold over the years, passed down from generation to generation. The tale of a love forged in adversity, of justice triumphing over corruption, of two broken people who found healing in each other. But Kate and Nathan did not need legends. They did not need stories told about them by others. They had the truth, which was better. They had found each other when they both needed it most. They had fought for justice and won. They had built a life together, brick by brick, day by day, meal by meal. She had not eaten a bite in nearly a week. The cowboy cooked for her. He watched her heal. And they lived happily, truly happily, for all the rest of their days. This content was carefully researched, developed, and manually edited by our team to deliver meaningful stories with valuable life lessons. Every narrative is crafted to entertain, inspire, and empower our audience. We believe that great stories can change lives, and we are committed to bringing you content that matters. Thank you for being part of our community.